not live. No, we are. We're live.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are on second episode of It's Time to Toss the Dice. We will be covering chapters 11 through 20 or 11 through 21 in the books, as well as episode 2 in the Wheel of Time series by Amazon. I'm Will, here with Lindsay.
Hi. Hi. Yep.
So, episode 1 left off with Moraine taking Egwene and
The boys.
Matt, Perrin, and Rand, as
And
well as
Tom.
Lan. Well, okay, in the books, Tom was there. In
Yes.
the shit show that Amazon produced, Tom doesn't exist yet. But yes, so they all left Eamon's Field. They are heading to Tar Valon.
Yep.
So we're going to start off with what happens in the books. Uh, so they leave Eamon's Field. Tom, Matt, Rand, Perrin, Egwene, Lan, and Moraine are all together. They'd all just
Yep.
left Eamon's Field, and they are traveling
Down the North
towards,
Road.
yeah, down the North Road, across Terran Ferry, and on to Tar Valon. So
Yep.
they're being traced by a Drakkar, which is basically an enormous flying
Flying beast.
monstrous bat creature thing that
Sucks the life out of you.
sucks the life out of you, seduces you, that kind of stuff. They're riding hard away from that. Uh, Rand is concerned because Egwene is riding Bella, and he's concerned that the old mare isn't going to be able to keep up with the war horses of Moraine and Lan, and probably going to just drop dead with Egwene on top of her.
Yep.
So they're riding. When they finally come to a stop, Moraine goes to uh, basically remove the exhaustion from the horses with the one power, and notices that Bella doesn't need it. Bella's in the best condition of all the horses, including the war horses that are trained and
Yep.
bred for this.
Yep. Um, the Emmonsfield folks want to stop and rest. Lan tells them no, that they can't. They can't stop until after they cross the Terran.
Hmm.
And at they keep going until they reach the town of Whitebridge. It is Whitebridge, right?
No,
No, it's
Terran
Tarrant
Ferry.
Ferry.
Terran Ferry,
Yes.
yes.
They reach the town of Tarrant Ferry in the middle of the night and wake up Master Hightower, the ferryman.
Mhm.
Oh crap! I just closed my tab.
Yeah, they tell him that they need to cross. He's not overly enthused about accompanying them across the ferry in the middle of the night.
Yep. In fact, he's quite upset about being
Yep.
roused from his bed in the middle of the night.
If you wait until morning, he'll gladly take him across, but he is not overly ambitious about doing it in the middle of the night.
But a hefty pile of gold from
Mhm.
Lan convinces him.
Yes, he is thoroughly convinced at that point that maybe it's okay for them to cross in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And he goes and gets his other ferrymen to help with the river crossing. I believe it's six men
Hmm.
to help cross the ferry. And they all climb aboard a a barge that's
Hmm.
got high sides that they get on with a ramp. And at this point, Moraine's already actually done some channeling, and there's quite a bit of fog in Terran Ferry. So they're doing all this in super fogginess too.
Yep, trying to conceal themselves from what's out there and what's chasing them. So they cross the Terran Ferry. She channels more to completely cover the river in fog so that they can't be seen, their tracks can't be followed, and all that good stuff, and to leave
Yep.
all the shadow spawn behind because they are not
Um,
going to be too ambitious to cross the river.
no, because Trollocs hate water.
Yep.
Um, Moraine does create a whirlpool in the Terran and sinks the boat.
Hmm.
And they generously compensate Master Hightower for the loss of his barge.
Hmm.
Master Hightower and his 6 men start hiking it back upriver towards the nearest bridge.
Yep. So the group continues on. They finally do rest, and Moraine and Egwene have a moment together where Moraine takes off the blue jewel that she wears around her forehead and uses it as a focal point for Egwene to focus on and to try and channel, in which case Egwene is able to essentially make the blue stone glow to show
Yep.
that she is in fact capable of channeling Sadar, which makes
Yep.
her extremely excited.
And Moraine actually, the last little flicker in the stone was all Egwene by herself. And Moraine tells her that most women take months to learn how to do that, and that one day she might become Amerlin Seat. And Egwene gets all excited and tells Rand that she's going to go be an Aes Sedai.
Yep. So Moraine basically lets Egwene know that when they get to Tar Valon, Egwene will be staying there to study in the White Tower to eventually become an Aes Sedai.
Yep.
Egwene gets
Um,
excited about this, tells Rand. Rand is not so excited
Not
about
so
this,
thrilled.
although I do believe Egwene says something to Rand about Rand being her warder when she becomes an Aes Sedai.
I don't know if that happens quite yet or not.
I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but
You might be jumping
regardless,
ahead a little bit.
at some point that
um,
conversation takes place.
yep, Moraine uses the one power to refresh everyone. They stay there and take a short rest, I think, for the night, the rest of the night.
Hmm.
And they start heading on back up the road. Land doing his scouting stuff. He also starts teaching the boys how to use their respective weapons. Has a sword. Perrin has an axe, and
Mat has a bow.
Mat has a bow,
All three of the boys
which
were pretty
they're all actually very good at using
yes.
already because it's a bow.
We also see Rand. Uh, Lan obviously works with uh, Rand a little bit more because Lan also carries a sword. So he teaches Rand a little bit about how to hold a sword, how to use a sword, that kind of thing. He talks with Perrin a little bit as well, but when it comes to the bow, all three of the boys were actually very proficient with shooting the bow. But when it comes Rand's turn, we are introduced to a concept called the void or the oneness. Um,
I think that was mentioned.
it was a
Like
it was
that's
a
mentioned back way back on when Tam and Rand are on the road.
it
He
is, but
mentions
it
it.
actually goes in depth here when because it's
Oh,
the
okay.
first time Rand actually assumes the void and actually channels. So it's a, a a focal point that he uses, almost like meditation, where he feeds all his emotions and everything into this single flame that's in his mind, and he just pours all of his emotion, everything into that, so that he can focus on what he's doing without emotion or anything getting involved. And he's extraordinarily deadly with the bow at this point when he does this. And I believe Land makes a comment of, "Good, I wish you all would have brought bows," or something to that effect. That everybody's good with the bow, but only one person brought it. So
Yep. At some point during the road to Berlon, Rand also spies on one of the little late night chats that Egwene and Moraine have. And he's not outed verbally, but Moraine does realize that he is spying on them.
hmm.
So they get to Berlon.
Yep,
Moraine and Lan go by Alice and Andra in Berlon.
yep.
They get led into the city and they go to the Stag and the Lion, which is where they stay.
Hmm.
And during this, Tom actually tells Rand a little bit of the Cathri. Oh my gosh, I can
Carath-
normally say this word.
the Carathian cycle, the
Yeah.
prophecies of the dragon.
As well as of the Stone of Tyr and
I
the
believe it
Swords of
gets
his
brought
Black
up
Sword.
because they hear stories while they're in Berlon about the false dragon Logain,
Ah,
defeating the Gildan army,
yep.
and that brings Tom to start speaking about the Carathian cycle and the prophecies of the dragon, and that kind of thing.
Yes. So they arrive at the Stag and Lion. Master Fetch welcomes them in.
Hmm.
Um, they get notified that the White Cloaks, the Children of the Light, are in town,
Yes.
and they go to take hot baths. They talk about the trouble in Galdon.
Hmm.
Um, Rand and Perrin have to shut Matt up because he has a bit of a jabbery mouth on
Uh,
him, so that he
loose
doesn't talk
lips,
about Trollocs in the Two Rivers.
right?
And
Yeah,
then
they're
they,
specifically told that they are not to tell anybody what is chasing them or what they are running from. That they are
yep,
not to mention being chased by Fades or Trollocs or Shadow Spawn or anything like that.
yep. And then so after the baths, after resting, they go to bed, and Rand has a super awesome, terrifying dream.
Hmm.
Um,
He's approached
where
by a
he
man with
meets
flaming eyes.
Balsamon. Yes. Well,
Yes,
he actually says he introduces
he does.
himself
He
as
introduces himself
Balsamon.
Balsamon,
Balsamon. And he
which
kills a
is
rat by breaking
which
its back.
yeah, Balsamon is another name for the Dark One.
Hmm.
So in Rand's mind, he is approached directly by the Dark One in his sleep. And yes, the man who introduced himself as Balsamon breaks the back of a rat in Rand's dream. When Rand wakes up, he finds that all of the rats have had their backs broken in the real world, in the waking world. All the rats are dead with their backs broken.
Yep. Balsamon also mentions the Eye of the World
Hmm.
in the dream, which is very interesting.
Yes, he also tells Rand that the Aes Sedai plan to use him as they did Logain.
Hmm. Yep.
So Rand wakes up pretty terrified. He seeks out Perrin, and Perrin had the same dream.
Yep. And Perrin, he actually goes downstairs and is told that one of his friends isn't feeling good, and goes back upstairs to see that Perrin is still there. Talks to Perrin. Again, they find out that they had the same dream.
Hmm.
Um, Rand goes back down because he decides I'm still going to go out and enjoy Baerlon because the city's huge, bigger than anything they've ever seen before.
Yeah, they grew up in the Two Rivers and Emond's Field. They've never left. This is, they're seeing the entire world right now, so he doesn't want to miss
Yep,
a moment of it.
exactly. While he is in the common room, I think he's probably getting some breakfast or something. He meets a new character who we'll see a lot of named Min or
Min
Elmin Bell.
Farshaw.
Yep, Min Farjaw. Min has visions, uh, pictures that she sees around people,
Horus. Yeah.
and she talks to Rand about that all of them are connected, including Egwene, and that she knows that Egwene is going to be an Aes Sedai, or she's going to choose that path for herself, and tells Rand a little bit about what she sees around him, which is very interesting.
Hmm.
um, where was it? It's a couple of things. A sword
Several
that isn't a
things.
sword. Yep.
Hmm.
A golden crown of laurel leaves, a beggar's staff, Rand pouring water on sand, a bloody hand, and a white hot iron. Three women standing over a funeral bier with him on it, and a black rock wet with blood. And at that point, he stops her because she's making him incredibly uncomfortable. um, so after that, now that he's thoroughly uncomforted, he leaves to go out into the city
Hmm.
and runs into none other than Padan Fane.
Yes, their local friendly merchant that also came from the Two Rivers.
Hmm.
Or not came from the Two
Um,
Rivers, but was in the Two Rivers when they left.
yes. Uh,
Rand tells Padan Fane where they're staying. Padan Fane basically begs Rand not to tell Moraine that He saw him there and he flees away from Rand. He wants nothing more to do with him. He wants nothing more than to be away from Rand and out of his sight.
Yep. Um,
He's very, very different demeanor than what we saw from Patton Fane in Eamon's Field. Very
yes,
different demeanor.
very different. So after his encounter with Fane, he runs into Matt, and they end up um, playing, having a little fun with some White Cloaks,
Yes.
which of course makes the White Cloaks believe now that they are dark friends, which is
So,
awesome.
White Cloaks or the Children of the Night of the Light are not particularly uh, they don't have a sense of humor. They're not particularly fun-loving or outgoing or anything like that. It's they're not the ones you can, joke around with or anything like that. So the fact that they're poking fun at the White Cloaks tends to not be in their best interest.
They actually send a dozen barrels hurtling out at the White Cloaks and splashing mud on them.
Yeah,
Um, so
and that's all it takes for them to be named as Dark Friends by the White
yes,
Cloaks.
and White Cloaks are uh, zealots in a lot of ways, and once they decide that you are a dark friend, you are guilty until proven innocent, instead of innocent until
And
proven
I
guilty.
don't think you can actually prove yourself innocent.
No, no, you can't. The hand of the light, the questioners. Yeah,
They're more torturers than questioners. Like if they send someone to the questioners to determine if they're actually dark friends, the White Cloaks already believe that this person is a dark friend. The questioners are not trying to find out if they truly are a dark friend. They simply torture them until they confess to being a dark friend, whether they are indeed a dark friend or they just confess because they want the torturing to stop. In which
yep,
case,
which is
they get
usually what
killed.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So an innocent person will finally admit to being a dark friend just because they're tired of being tortured, in which case they're sentenced to death.
Yep. So they make it back to the inn. They talk to Perrin about the dream. Perrin says he didn't tell anyone. And Perrin tells them that he was actually just about to leave to come find them because Nynaeve has showed up at the inn.
Yes.
Um, Basically saying, the um, town hall, city council, with the gentleman said somebody should send somebody after them, but obviously they can't make any decisions because they're men, according to Nynaeve. So
Right.
she goes to the women's circle, and the women's circle says, "Yes, go." So she goes.
Correct. So
Yep.
that's a little bit. I know we discussed a little bit the difference between the women's circle and the town council and
Village council, yeah.
who has more power there between the mayor and the wisdom. And if this is not definitive proof that the women's circle and the wisdom hold more sway and a louder voice in these small villages, then
Yeah. Well, much of the Wheel of Time is a matriarchal culture and not
oh,
a
thousand
patriarchal
percent,
culture.
a
Yep.
1000%.
Um, so they all go and have a little chat in one of the private dining rooms at the Stag and the Lion. Um, Min gets brought in, I believe, at that point also to look at everybody together.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, Moraine
and
is very interested in Min and her gift.
yes, and what she sees around the three boys
Correct.
specifically.
Correct.
And there's a little bit of a disagreement. Nynaeve wants the boys and Egwene to come back to the Two Rivers with her, to Emmons Fields,
Hmm.
and the boys and Egwene are saying, no, we're going with Moraine. And it comes to eventually Moraine kicks everybody but Nynaeve out of the room, and they have a chat that ends up having Nynaeve travel with them when they leave.
Hmm. Yes,
Yep.
because Nynaeve does not trust Moraine, does not trust the Aes Sedai, period. Does not trust
Mm-mm.
anybody but herself with her people. And
Correct.
those three boys and Egwene are her people, and she does not trust them to just be out alone in the world with anybody else.
Yep. And when after all of that discussion, Rand actually pulls Nynaeve aside for a moment and asks her about Tam's fever dream. And she admits that um, Tam had left town and that when he came back, he brought his wife, Kari, and a baby
Yes.
back to town. So Rand is potentially an outsider. She doesn't necessarily know, I don't think, that the baby isn't Tam's, but she does know that he has a sort of strange
I,
way of being.
I think we do know definitively later on just how much Nynaeve does know at this point. I believe it is discussed later on just how much Nynaeve does know.
I think it is.
But I'll
I don't remember how much has gone into here, though.
correct. Yeah, I don't remember just how much Nynaeve is willing to admit at this moment in the story, but I know it at a certain time throughout this series, she lets known to Rand, uh, as does Tam, all the entirety of the truth. And I'll leave it at that
Yes.
and not say what it is at this time.
Yep. Yep. So
Uh,
Tom is performing.
one thing is while Matt and Rand were having their fun with the Children of the Light, uh, they do see the heron marked blade that Rand carries, and they make mention of
Yes.
that, and that's one of the reasons why Matt and Rand are able to get away from them so easily is that they do not want to contend with anyone who carries a heron marked blade at that time.
Right. Yep. Um, So after the chat, Tom is performing in the inn, and they all dance. Rand dances with Nynaeve, Egwene, and Moraine, of all people. um, Rand, when everybody decides to go to bed, they kind of head up, and Rand goes to get some milk. And when he comes out of the kitchen, there is a Fade standing. I'm guessing somewhere in the common room, headed straight for
It was
him.
in the kitchen.
In the kitchen, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Um, Lan sort of leaps down the stairs and slashes and takes care of the Fade, I think. I don't actually know. Scares it at least.
He doesn't kill it, but he shows up quickly enough, abruptly enough, and fiercely enough that the Fade decides this isn't a fight that it probably wants to take and runs
Right.
off.
Yep. So everybody runs toward the exit. They grab their horses and they start riding down the streets of Baralon.
Hmm.
In the middle of this, the White Cloaks are like, "Where do you think you're going?"
Traveling in the
And
middle of the night, huh?
yeah, super sketchy. Bornhold, one of the Children of the Light, recognizes Rand from earlier in the
Hmm.
day. Says that they're all dark friends,
Hmm.
wants to have them come back to camp. Moraine does a little bit of magicy and makes herself huge.
She does. So Children of the
um,
Light are convinced that anyone who can channel, Aes Sedai or otherwise, are also dark friends, servants of the shadow, and all this stuff. So it's typically wise for Aes Sedai to conceal their identity from the White Cloaks so that they don't have to deal with these interactions. Moraine goes complete opposite approach of I'm going to channel and make them know I can channel so they'll leave us the hell alone, which
yep,
actually
and
works out perfectly.
she uses a weave that's sort of an illusion type weave and makes herself appear very large enough to step over the wall where the gate is to Berlon. Um, and everybody gets to leave because of her distraction. And as soon as she's on the other side, she comes back down to normal size, and the illusion goes away. And the Watchmen, knowing Moraine and trusting her as Lady Alice, presumably, close the gate with the White Cloak still inside the walls.
Yep. Yes. So and we'll learn a little bit more about a lot of this later, but outside of the Eamon's Field, Aes Sedai are generally very well respected wherever they go, aside
Mhm.
from certain groups of people, such as the Children of the Light or the White Cloaks, whatever you want to call them. So, in towns like Bear Lawn or White Bridge or especially Tarvalon, like it's someone
Camelin.
who, yeah, um, someone who's known as an Aes Sedai isn't going to encounter a lot of resistance or anything like that. So the Fairlawn guards, they know she's an Aes Sedai. She's outside the gate. They're gonna close the gate and keep the White Cloaks away from the someone that they know is a friend.
Because nobody likes white cloaks.
Nobody. I don't even. White Cloaks don't even like White Cloaks. I mean,
This is true. This is true. This is true. I love their arc later in the books, but we'll get to that later. um, so after fleeing Belon, they go on down the Camelin Road,
mhm,
and they keep heading on down it for a couple of days, making a decent pace
mhm.
as they head on.
Heading east.
Um, huh?
Heading east.
Yes, heading east towards Tarvalon.
Heading east towards Camelin.
Well, yes, towards Camelin, but ultimately towards
Tarvalon is
Tarvalon.
north,
Yeah, but you've got to go to Camelin first. Come on.
unless you're Amazon. Um,
Shh. um. So, uh, as they're going along, about 3 days after Berlon, they hear a Trolloc horn sound from the west,
mhm.
and
Behind
then
them.
there's Trollocs behind them,
Yes.
right? So they mount their horses. A second horn blows, and they start going. And Lan is going to head off elsewhere, and Moraine makes a comment to him, "The light go with you, last Lord of the Seven Towers,"
Mhm.
which is the first hint that we get that maybe Lan is more than he seems.
The first hint we really get is the Hadori. We just don't know what it is.
Correct. Yep.
And then, yes, the
Yep.
last Lord of the Seven Towers.
Yep. So they figure the there's a third horn, I think that sounds,
And
and
each of the
it's
horns are
7 to 8 miles
closer than
from
the
them.
last one,
Yep.
so they know that they're closing in on them quickly. Like Trollocs can run at an incredible pace.
Yep. Moraine keeps the group at a steady pace despite urging from Nynaeve to go faster, just to make sure there aren't Trollocs ahead of them as well. The horns keep getting closer. Moraine tells them that there's at least 3/5 of Trolloc, maybe five, led by at least one Fade. Um, so they keep running. They top a hill. Um, Lan shouts for the Seven Towers. I'm trying to see if they're actually like, oh, there is a Fade there. So a Fade shows up. Lan shouts for the Seven Towers. The rest of the group, Rand and Perrin, shout Manetheren,
Hmm.
because at this point they know their history is Manetheren. And Mat shouts something very interesting,
He just
um,
starts ranting in the old tongue.
ranting in the old tongue. Um,
Doesn't
yeah,
even realize that he's speaking in the old tongue.
doesn't
Doesn't
know.
have
He's
a
gonna
clue.
hear it, but I can hear it.
He thinks he's speaking just as plain as anybody else, but everybody else is. The hell did you just say?
He says, Kari an Kaldazar, Kari an Elisande al Elisande.
Forward the Red Eagle. I know the first part.
For the honor of the Red Eagle,
Yep,
for the honor of the Rose of the Sun, the Rose of the Sun.
yep.
Yep.
I knew the Red Eagle part. um, so Moraine and Lan decide that there's one place that is going to be safe for them from the Shadow Spawn. That there's one place
that
that
they
the
can go.
Trollocs would not dare enter, and that they could be free of the Trollocs.
Yep.
And that place is Shadar Logoth.
Or formerly known as Arid Hall.
Yep. Shadar Logoth,
Um,
meaning where the shadow waits, or the
yep,
shadow's
or
waiting.
Shadows Waiting. So they lead the group into Shadar Logoth. to escape the Trollocs that are chasing them, and Moraine agrees after a little bit of pushing from Lan. Um, yeah,
And
so
we,
they ride into the city. The city is broken, but Rand is in complete awe of what is left standing there.
yep, the city is
Um,
broken, it is barren, it is empty, it is deserted, it is desolate.
yep. Comments suggest that the largest building in Barelon would have disappeared into the shadows of almost everything inside of the city. It's made of marble. Palaces are topped with domes. There's bronze fountains and statues. This was once a metropolis, basically.
Yes, it was one of the 10 nations.
Yep.
We learned the city or the story of the nation of Eredhall, what is
Yes.
now Shadar Logoth, how it was a thriving uh, capital of one of the 10 nations, and Manetheren, when it was fighting the Shadow, reached out for help from Eredhall, and Eredhall refused to aid Manetheren against the Shadow, and eventually that corruption
Ate
destroyed.
the city from the inside,
Yep.
basically.
So now everything in the city is tainted, everything in the city is corrupted, and Moraine tells him, "Do not
Not
touch
touch
anything.
anything. Yeah.
Do
So
not
they find a
touch
place to
anything."
stay inside of a very large stone building that could fit the Stag and the Lion inside of it probably twice, three
Right.
times. Um, the boys get a little bored just sitting there, and Matt and Rand head off to do a little bit of exploring. Um, Probably not the best idea, but they do it anyways. Um, Rand suggests that maybe Hall would have been the greatest city in the Trolloc Wars, and that's why the Trollocs are afraid of it. But either way, Trollocs won't come in. They're safe as far as they know, so they decide to go on a little walk.
We also, I believe, Moraine tells them something else about Shadar Logoth?
I don't think so.
About Mashadar?
They don't tell him anything about Mastodon.
Do they not? Okay.
I don't think so. Not until after. So they're wandering the streets. Um, they or they get to a place, and there's a man's voice telling them that the tower that Matt wants to climb is not safe. He introduces himself as Mordeth, and that he's a treasure hunter, and asks if they would like to help him carry treasure he's found back out to his horses outside of the city, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They accept. He leads them into a building. There's jewels and gold and all sorts of stuff everywhere. Um, Mordeth asks them if they're alone, and Matt tells them no, that they've got Moraine, Lan, Nynaeve, Egwene, and Tom, and that they're going to Tar Valon. And Mordeth gets very upset by this, accuses them of lying. I guess Perrin is with them. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize Perrin was with them. Mordeth is sort of ranting after they're like, we should come back tomorrow to help you. It's getting late. Rand kind of notices that he doesn't have a shadow
Mm-hmm.
and freaks out. Um, and Mordeth swells up. Everybody starts panicking, and he shouts at them that they're all dead and disappears. They start to run away. Lan is there. Nynaeve says they were looking for them. Moraine asks them what happened. Um, they tell her about Mordeth. Moraine checks them, I guess, to make sure that they weren't touched or anything like that. They say they thought it was safe since Trollocs weren't coming in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's when Moraine tells them the story of the thousands of Trollocs that camped in Shadar Logoth late in the Trolloc Wars that never came back out.
Hmm.
which is why the Trollocs won't go in.
Yes.
She does tell them the story about how a man named Mordeth came to Eredhall, spoke to the king, and became his second, and was potentially the individual who.
When Manetheren reached out for help, is the one that convinced the king
Not to
that
go help,
that
and that
Erdhall needed to
they were
not help.
only they were only safe if they stayed with themselves, and that everybody else was a threat. Um,
So they
yeah,
closed the gates and kept everybody in Erdhall in Erdhall.
yes,
No one in, no one out.
yep. And for anybody who knows, these books are heavily influenced by the Lord of the Rings, the first three at least, and this is a direct reference to what is happening in the Lord of the Rings in is it Roshar? Rohan?
Yeah.
Rohan.
Yes.
Where did I get Roshar from?
I'm. I was thinking Rorschach. I'm like, huh? There's a test
I gotta
involved
look
here.
that up. I gotta look that up now.
It is the writers of Rohan. The king's corrupted essentially by.
Oh, it's Roshar's from The Way of the Kings, which I'm
Oh,
also
okay.
reading right now. That's why. Yeah, so Rohan has that individual who's whispering the sweet nothings into the king's ear. At least I
Hmm.
think I'm pretty sure it's Rohan.
It was.
Um,
It was.
and where's it? It's not Gondor, is
Hmm.
it?
Yes.
One of those two.
No, it's
Um,
Rohan refused to help Gondor.
right. So that's where this story sort of got its origins from, by the way. They're getting ready to go to sleep. Lan tells Moraine, we can't. There's Trollocs inside the city now. And Moraine says, make for the river, follow this star, basically.
Matt decided before they left that he needed a souvenir from Shadar Logoth.
A super fancy souvenir.
Matt is almost beckoned to a small chest, and he opens it, and inside that chest he finds a.
That's from the TV show.
No. And he actually.
No.
It actually happened in the books too. Like the dagger was in a small chest.
Oh, was it? I thought he
Yes,
just picked it up when they were moving the treasure for
and it might have been
Mordeth.
when they were moving the treasure from Mordeth
Yeah,
that he found it, but I do believe that it was in a small chest,
it might
and
have been. I
he
don't remember.
was it almost compelled to open it,
Yep.
and he gets a dagger
With
with
a
a ruby in the hilt, not the freaking pommel.
it doesn't actually say.
I
It just
think
says
it
a
did.
ruby dagger in the notes that I'm looking at.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure in the books when it first describes the dagger, it talks about the ruby being in the hilt,
Yep. Um,
not the freaking pommel.
so they go on to try to escape. They come across a fog that separates the party. Nynaeve asks about it, and Moraine says that it is called Mashadar. It's the evil of Shadar Logoth, and it will kill you with a mere touch, and it cannot be destroyed.
Yep.
Whoa. Sorry, there was like a truck or something that went by, and my whole house just shook. um, so this is actually they're separated. Moiraine says, "Follow that star," and the group, everybody in the group, finds their own way outside of the city, separated into a couple of groups. Egwene and Perrin
Three.
are together.
Three separate groups. Egwene and Perrin are separated together. Matt,
Rand,
Tom, and
Matt,
Rand.
and Tom are together,
And then Moraine,
and
Nynaeve, and Lan.
yep, Nynaeve. Wait, what? Yeah,
Moraine,
Nynaeve,
Nynaeve, and Lan.
Moraine, and Lan. Yep.
Yep.
And that's actually where we're gonna stop because that's where episode 2 of the show stops.
Kinda.
No, it is. Well, sort of. It's got like 60 seconds afterwards, but that's it.
Fuck, and Amazon. they never made it to Bear Lawn, for Christ's sake. I mean,
Yes, that is true. So the episode starts with actually what I think is a fantastic scene. It doesn't happen in the books, but it is sort of an introductory scene for the White Cloaks, where we meet Eamon Valda, who is a wonderful human being. And he is,
High Inquisitor, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember what he is this early on.
I believe
He
he was
does
High
become the High Inquisitor later,
Okay.
but he is speaking to an Aes Sedai who he has, well, he eats a bird that literally, it's actually not allowed to be served anymore. It's illegal now, but apparently it used to be a thing, that like cuts your mouth while you eat it. And he's got an Aes Sedai who is presumably yellow Aja because she's wearing a yellow dress, and we get a shot of a yellow Aes Sedai ring, who he is burning at the stake.
Mhm.
So he's a wonderful human being.
He is. He is. Gotta love the White Cloaks.
Yes. And he has a collection of rings as well on his belt. So he's done this before, and he really does not like Aes Sedai.
Does not. Does
No.
not. He's a marvelous human. Really, truly marvelous. Um,
But the scene was wonderful. I think it
I
portrays
actually,
Eamon Valda beautifully.
actually did like the introduction we got to the White Cloaks and
I did too.
just how evil they are and their virtuous mindset to be good, like how evil they truly are.
Yeah, yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed that introduction actually.
Except for the
Um,
ring. Yeah.
I did kind of, I know that we don't I don't love the rings, but I did appreciate the shot of them on his belt.
Yeah, no, right. If they were the actual Aes Sedai rings that were hanging at his waist, I would have had absolutely no issue with it at all. It's just the gaudy monstrosities that they decided that they were going to use.
Yeah.
I will
So
hate every time I see from
yeah, we
now
get
until the end
shots
of
of our
time.
party running, riding their horses. They make it to Terran Ferry, being chased by Trollocs.
Hmm.
Master Hightower takes them across the river. I don't think they take their horses in the show across the river.
Don't think they do either.
Nope,
Uh,
they do. They dismount.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I'm looking at it.
I remember. I don't remember them with the horses on the river, but I remember them on horses on the other side of the river. So
Yep, and it is
either the
actually
horses are
just
really good
Master
swimmers, or
Hightower.
yeah.
It's oh, they do take their horses. Okay, so they take their horses. It's just Master Hightower though, so the boys and Lan are helping to pull the rope for the barge to get it across. The Trollocs show up on the other side of the river. Moraine does her whirlpool thing, and our lovely Master Hightower jumps into the water, which is definitely different from
Yes.
um, the books.
From reality,
But
yes.
yes, but they do use that as a way to open an explanation of the three oaths for the Aes Sedai from Moraine to Egwene, because Egwene accuses Moraine of killing him, um, and it opens it up for Moraine to explain the oaths, which is something that actually viewers need to know at this point.
And the three oaths are.
Are you testing me?
Yeah.
Uh, to speak no word that is not true, to make no weapon with which one man may kill another,
Uh huh.
and to never use the one power as a weapon except in the defense of your own life, the life of your warder, or that of another sister.
The last defense.
Yes. I
Yes.
think there's something about Oregon's shadow spawn in there too.
But that's, I mean, is kind of a given. If there's shadow spawn there,
Yeah, but
shadow
you do
spawn mean they
actually
kill
have
you.
to say it, otherwise, it because of the oath rod, you do actually have to say Oregon's shadow spawn.
Um.
They did modify the oaths very slightly for the show changing the word man to person, but that's okay because women can totally pick up weapons too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yep. So I don't mind that change. Um, they stop and have a little powwow. They talk about missing Nynaeve and how Nynaeve would just be shouting at Moraine and all of this stuff. Moraine takes Egwene off and they have their little chat with the stone, which is a great scene. I love it. Um, that's the scene where they talk about the oaths, actually. And Egwene makes the stone glow. Perrin reveals that he's got this gnarly gash on his leg that he's trying to hide from everybody, unfortunately. Which actually gets a lot of attention in this episode and then not a lot of attention later on. So I don't know why they kind of decided to ignore it after this episode, or maybe in a later episode we can
Because
just
they had
assume that
other
like
stuff to fuck up after this episode. We're on.
well, I'm just saying like we could just assume that maybe the Tinkers help him take care of it or something. I don't know.
It's just,
Shut up.
they don't like being called tinkerers.
Excuse me.
They're traveling people.
Uh, um, there is kind of a sweet scene between Perrin and Egwene where Perrin asks her if he thinks that they're ever going to go home, and she says no. Which is I think it's kind of sweet, and it's kind of shows a little bit of Egwene's belief in the world or lack thereof, or
It shows
it shows a little
parents.
bit of her character.
I think it shows parents' softness and wanting
Yep,
to be home.
yep, I agree.
Like, Perrin wants nothing more than to just be home.
Yep,
Even after all the bad shit, all he wants to do is be home. I actually don't entirely hate that scene, even though it never happened in the books. I don't entirely hate that scene because it does kind of show a soft side of Perrin that later on in the series is going to be kind of lost.
yep. I actually even a lot of the scenes in the show that weren't in the book where we get to spend some time just getting to know our characters and spending some quality moments with them. I actually enjoy a lot of them because the actors are great. Um, so after our little heartwarming scene between Egwene and Perrin, where they kind of realize that they're never going to get to go home, we get the dream, which doesn't happen this time in Baerlon. It happens while they're out in the woods, and it's instead of rats, it's bats, which is horribly disgusting because Rand like pulls one out of his mouth, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, he's almost
Um,
suffocating on it.
Yep, I don't hate that they changed this because it's horrifying and it achieved the goal that they were trying to achieve, I think. um, and all of the boys admit that they had the dream. And Rand, after that, kind of goes off on Moraine a little bit.
Hmm.
Like boy's got a backbone. What's a man to do at the White Tower except become an errand boy? Poor Lan.
Right.
Puppy.
Poor Lord of the Seven Towers.
Yeah. So eventually they do all follow um, Moraine and Lan. Egwene's the first one to go because she's like, "What are y'all gonna do? You can't go back." And they're like, "She's right. Dang it."
Yeah, Egwene basically sides with Moraine immediately.
Yep. Um, but that's okay. So as they're going along the road for this one, this doesn't happen in the books. I actually kind of love this scene. Uh, oh, it's the White Cloaks first. White Cloaks show up. Did I miss the scene where they sing? I don't think so. okay, so they run up against some white cloaks.
Hmm.
At some point, they sing. We'll talk about that later if I miss it. And Moraine, um, even after explaining the oaths to Moraine, sorry, other way around.
To
Moraine,
Egwene.
right, Egwene thinks that Moraine is lying. Even after the oaths have been explained, they hide her ring, and the White Cloaks actually check her fingers, which is interesting because if you have a ring on long enough, it leaves an indent in your finger. They should have seen the indent, but I don't know. We meet Bornhold, and we get to see Eamon Valda again. Um, and they make it through relatively unscathed
Well,
from the
they
White Cloak
something
encounter.
interesting happens because Moraine was injured in Eamon's Field
That's
by a
right.
Trolloc weapon and had a pretty gnarly gash herself.
Right, a blade
And
from Sakandar, which leaves a wound that is extremely difficult to heal, even for Aes Sedai.
correct. And Moraine shows it to him, explains that, it's from a Trollocs blade, blah, blah, blah. And uh, Child Bornhold says something interesting in the Amazon series that you would never hear a White Cloak utter in the books ever. And that
Right,
is, you need an Aes Sedai to heal that.
right,
And Egwene questions Moraine later on as to the three oaths and everything
right.
because
Because Moraine said that she had a sister in Whitebridge.
yes, it said they're traveling
Um,
to Whitebridge because she has a sister there. And after they get past the White Cloaks, uh,
Egwene's like, "You
Egwene
don't have a
questions it,
sister
says,
there."
you have a sister. And she says, well, there's Aes Sedai everywhere. I very well could have a sister in Whitebridge.
Right, and they're all my sisters.
Yes,
So,
all Aes Sedai are my sisters.
oh, and this is also an explanation. Egwene thought that Aes Sedai could heal their own wounds, and she learns that they can't. That Aes Sedai cannot heal themselves, which is actually very important. um, yep. I don't think knowing Born, I don't know that Bornhold from the books. Probably not in the presence of Valda, but he might have like Bornhold's not quite as he's a little bit more level-headed than a lot of other children. um, I could see him if somebody had an injury that bad, knowing that there's only one way to save that person's life, I could see him suggesting an Aes Sedai.
Yes, but at the same time, no child, regardless of who they are or how level headed they are, would ever say that to another human being in the presence of any other child of the light.
Right, that's what I said. He wouldn't have said
Yeah,
that in front of Valda.
he wouldn't have said it in front of Aemon
Um,
Valda or any other White Cloak
right,
because,
but just knowing the kind of person he was, I could see him saying that in the right circumstance. That is, of course, until we meet Galad, anyways. um, okay, so after this, there is actually a scene where they run through, they ride through rather quickly a very large, vast open plain that has the remnants of a first age, our age, bridge, and it's actually big enough where it could potentially be considered like the Golden Gate Bridge, perhaps, or the Mackinac Bridge, or I think there's a bigger bridge in Japan, something like that. There might be one in England as well, in Europe. But it is quite a large bridge, so we get some hints that they are kind of in our world, just very far into the future. And that's when they sing this. I love the song. I don't know what you think of the song, the Manetheren song, but I loved it.
I can take it or leave it.
Yeah. And then we get the monologue from Moraine where she tells them about their where the song comes from and their history and the story of Manetheren, which is I love that they included it. They made it a little bit shorter, but that's okay. But they did include it, um, and I'm really glad that they did because I know I have heard like Rafe talking about, why are we including, I don't know how long it is, 2 to 5 minutes of just them riding and hearing the story of Manetheren. And it's like, well, you kind of have to because that story it had to be in the show.
Yeah, no, I agree that the story of Manetheren had to be there, but I don't like they added in so much other unnecessary bullshit that for him to say, well, we had to have this in there, otherwise shit wouldn't make sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense for Perrin to be married either, but you fucked that up. So I mean, I've
Yeah.
no faith in your decision making anymore, guy.
I don't know. I think it might have been some Amazon executives that kind of wanted it yoinked, but it was one that he kind of put his foot down on. Like you've pulled out so much other stuff. This one's got to stay.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it did.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I do like that we get to learn about Manetheren because
mhm.
the Manetheren blood is very important to who the people of the two rivers in Emansfield are. So
Yeah. Especially as we get farther on into the story.
yes,
So the party takes a break, and Perrin takes a look at his gnarly leg, and there's some wolves that show up,
hmm
and he's utterly terrified of them, rightly so. And then one just kind of comes up and starts licking his leg,
yep,
like, "Hey, friend,"
yeah,
which is
he's terrified, and the wolves do not seem to be bothered by him at all.
nope.
They're not.
In fact, they seem to maybe like him a little bit.
Yeah, say they're not growling at him. They're not threatening him. They just, hey, bro, you're here. We're here. What's good?
Yep. So that night, the party gets woken up in the middle of the night, being chased by Trollocs. They start running. Moraine is not, because of her wound from the Thakandar blade. She's not exactly in a state to be making any sort of decisions at the moment. In fact, I believe she's unconscious. And Lan makes the decision to take everybody into Arid Hall.
Yep. To Shadar Logoth we go.
Yep. There's a really sweet scene between Perrin and Mat in Arid Hall where Mat gives Perrin a blade that was made by Layla. Not in the books.
Well,
Not
it
really a
couldn't have been in the
necessary
fucking
scene.
books because
I
Layla
know,
wasn't
I
in the
know,
fucking books.
I know. So, obviously not in the books because Layla didn't exist, but I do still like the fact that we get that moment with Mat and Perrin.
I wonder if maybe we find out in a couple seasons that Perrin's just fucking insane and was never married because Layla's not a real person.
Seriously?
They've done stupider shit in season one, so you never know.
Oh gosh. Um, so uh, they do not meet Mordeth
Nope.
here, but
Because why would we need to meet an important character?
I know.
Like Min
Um,
Farshaw, why would we need to meet her?
I know. No Min Farshaw in this.
No
But
Berlon.
I know. It's okay. But Mat does take a little sauntry jaunt off by himself and finds the dagger in a chest.
hmm
Um, and it's kind of a
And
cool
it's
little scene where he looks at the dagger and ogles it for a moment.
say it's
And
audibly calling to him essentially and summoning him to this chest.
yep, which I do like. I like the way that they lured him to the chest. Um, and then very shortly after that, Mashadar shows up and everybody panics and runs and it eats a horse, which is horrifying, by the way. uh,
Mash
and
Mashadar just doing Mashadar things.
yep, they escape. And this is when Nynaeve shows up after having been presumed dead in the previous episode, holding a dagger to Lan's throat.
hmm
Episode ends.
Yep.
Yep.
I actually liked the look and feel of Shadar Logoth in the
I do too.
series. It was very dark. It was a very unpleasant place to be, and you could just sense that in watching it. I will give them credit for their representation of Shadar Logoth.
Yeah.
Now, they
I do
fucked up
think
plenty
too.
everywhere else with no Berlon, no men, no Mordeth inside Shadar Logoth,
Right.
and all that.
I do miss Mordeth. I think I miss Mordeth more than I miss Min because
we still,
introducing Min
we
later than
still,
they did is okay.
we still don't have fucking Tom Maryland for God's sake.
I know. But missing Mordeth at literally the only point where you can introduce him is a little right because Min can come in later. She's not critical to this particular part of the story.
Tom Maryland is introduced
Um,
like in the fourth or fifth chapter of the
will
damn
you
book, and he's
quit?
still not in it.
I'm talking about Min.
Yeah, Men's introduced in Verlon, like the first third of the book. Nope.
I know, but I'm saying like her introduction. It's okay that it happens at the end of season one and not in episode 2 or 3. I think
Tom's isn't.
that's
Tom
fine.
is supposed
That's
to be
fine.
here. God damn it. Tom is essentially like a father figure to the boys while they're on the road
I
because
know.
Lan in the books, Lan is not the soft, gooey, mushy person that Amazon makes him out to be. Like Rand or Lan is hard as a rock. I mean, I believe it's even written in one of the books. Like Lan smiles at some point. I don't remember what book it is or anything like that.
And it's so odd.
But yeah, Rand even like from Rand's perspective, he even says, "Wait, can a stone smile?" Like I mean, it's that kind of thing. Like he's not
Yeah,
this super soft, pussified version that Amazon has made him out to be. So it's very important that we have Tom Maryland from the beginning with these boys on the road because Tom is that father figure that they all need on this journey, and
it
it's
is.
his
Yeah,
presence is
critical.
extraordinarily important. And the fact that we still don't fucking have it.
Oh my gosh. Well, you'll be fine. um, but I was gonna say in reference to your comments about Shadar Logoth, there is the scene where we get Egwene and Rand taking a moment on top of or up higher in a building where they're looking out across Shadar Logoth, and I think they did a really good job also representing the scale and
Yes.
how huge this city actually
Yeah,
is.
it's not a small town by any stretch of the
Right.
imagination. It's I'm like you said earlier, it in its prime, it was a sprawling metropolis. It
Metropolis, yeah.
was enormous.
And I think they did a beautiful job with the city and their presentation of it based on the way that it's described in the books. And I can't wait till we come back to it later in the show.
And they'll fuck it up, no doubt.
Oh hush, you don't know that.
They've gotten two things right in the show so far. I highly have
I'm
my
pretty
doubts.
sure they've gotten more than 2 things right.
The Trollocs and Charlotte Goth are about all they've gotten right.
No,
Oh, and the
you've
White
agreed
Cloaks.
with
They've
me
got three.
saying that you liked the intro to
Yeah,
this.
I said
That
they
they
got
got
three.
White
I'll
Cloaks
include the
right.
White
So
Cloaks in that. They got the White Cloaks right. So 3 out of
see,
100
see,
ain't bad, I guess.
I think you like more this show than you're willing to admit.
No, I've admitted everything I've liked. It's three things: the White Cloaks, Shadarlo
No,
Goth, and
no,
uh, the Trollocs.
no.
That's just about it.
Right? What about the scene where Egwene channels for the first time? Is that an eye roll I'm getting from you? And the
Yes,
bats.
because
You can't tell me that you didn't enjoy the bats.
I didn't enjoy the bats because they're supposed to be rats in Berlon, where Min is, but that's.
But it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it, but it also wasn't right. I'm not saying it was terrible, but I'm saying they didn't get it
Anyway,
right.
yes. So the whole group skips going to Berlon. It's fine.
Tom Maryland doesn't exist. Min Farshaw doesn't exist. Perrin's made up wife is still dead. I think Bob Barker's in the next episode, and we're just throwing in random shit.
I liked this episode a lot. I think they did a lot um, in line with the books. They did have to change some things, but it was pretty good overall.
They cut out so much of what actually happened during those chapters. Like, we went from Terran Ferry to Shadar Logoth, basically. Like, that's it. Like, they cut out everything in between.
Right, but they added stuff that happened at earlier on in the books, and they did meet White Cloaks, which happened in the books. Just met them differently.
They,
Right?
I know that we meet the White Cloaks in the first book, but I don't think they met them as a full group.
No, they just got labeled as dark friends for splashing mud on their
Yeah,
raid
no, I mean,
outfits.
I know we meet them in Berlon, but then our first real interaction with them comes a little bit later on.
Yeah, it
It
does.
would come
It's
shortly after the Shadar Logoth incident.
yep with Perrin and Egwene.
Correct. That's the first. I mean, yes, we meet them in Berlon, and there's minor um interaction there, but our first real interaction with them is a little bit later on.
Yeah,
I just there's I don't understand how we make up characters to put in this story that don't even exist in the Wheel of Time realm, but we take out people that are actually fucking intricate cogs in this fucking wheel. Like, how do we not have Tom or Min? And
well,
yeah,
we will, just not yet.
I understand, and you are right with Min that her coming in later on in the series is
It's fine.
it's wrong, but I can understand it. Tom still missing, still pisses me off. Like, I remember watching this episode. I'm like, where the fuck is he?
I would have liked. I would
I
have liked
believe
to
you
have
and I
Tom
even
early
spoke
on.
on the phone. And when he
We
finally
did.
showed up, I'm like, oh, you fucking get it there. Like,
Yeah. I do miss having. I do miss having Tom in these early episodes.
where he's supposed to be? Yeah, yeah, I miss him too.
I do miss having him, but where was I? I'm sorry. Um, I do.
You miss having him
I
there,
do
but
miss
Amazon
having
fucked it
him.
up, so we don't get him. Gotcha.
But it's weird, like, because I do miss having him, but knowing why, like, because they did explain why they chose to introduce him where they did. Do I wish that we had more
Because
Tom?
they're
Yes,
dumb.
of course. Um,
So
do
so
I
what was their rationale for not having Tom at this point?
um to give him more important, like more of his own entrance instead of lumping him, like, because we're just now meeting all of these characters and there's already a lot of characters for us to meet. So they introduced Tom later because he is very important and he needs his own introduction. And I can appreciate that. Like, because he gets his own introduction.
They could have given him his own introduction where he was supposed to be anyway. They easily could have given him his own introduction in Eamon's Field in the Two Rivers where we first encountered him in the books. Like, I mean,
I'm not as upset about it as you are, I guess.
fucking ridiculous.
But we'll talk about that in another episode when we actually meet Tom.
Yeah, in about In about 3 seasons, Tom will show up and we'll be able to talk about him.
What do you mean? He's only been in 2 episodes.
I think season 4, we finally meet Tom.
You see this eye roll we've got going here.
No, and let's see, I believe the next episode, we're not really going to be able to compare to anything in the books because none of it happens in the books.
I'm not sure because I don't remember what happens in episode 3. I'm gonna have to
Well,
watch it.
we will find out next weekend. All right, thank you all for joining us. That's all we've got for this episode.